The Nikon F mount is a 3-lug bayonet mount that was first released in 1959 with the release of the Nikon F camera. It's got a 44mm throat and a 46.5mm flange to focal plane distance. The F mount was in use for over 60 years, basically unchanged. They even used it as they moved from film to digital, greatly opening up the range of different lenses that you're able to use. And because of that, it's the longest used lens mount for 35mm DSLRs, or SLRs indeed, ever. Of course, through that time, there were different updates. In 1977, they added in auto indexing. In 83, auto indexing shutter. But now, in 2025, 66 years after its first release, the Nikon F mount is out of production. There seems to be no more cameras or F mount lenses now made for this mount. They've gone all in on the Z mount. So I thought now is a perfect time to take stock, take a look at how Nikon is doing in 2025, see what we think they should be doing differently and what we hope will be coming next. Now, so I don't get accused of being a fanboy, let me just take my MPS vest off. This video is actually brought to you by my Nikon Expert Setup Guide. If you're a Z user, check it out. It runs you through every different camera in the system, showing you how to set them up, what every different physical control and menu option does, so you can get the most out of them for your style of shooting. You can find details on that in my link tree below, as well as details of my new Patreon Uncut, taking you behind the scenes with uncut, uncensored footage on photo shoots. So before we go too deep into this, I have to acknowledge that yes, it's not officially confirmed by Nikon that F mount is out of production. It's just noted that products that haven't been replenished at retailers, and that's the assumption. And it's gone through the rumor process. I think Nikon has actually commented on it, vaguely saying, don't believe everything you read. But I believe that it is the case that F mount is essentially out of production. Maybe there's a last few things trickling out here and there, but this is just how it's done. Brands don't announce that they're killing off a line until it's obvious to the entire market. Thinking back to Sony and their DSLTs, I remember talking to Sony at Photokina, asking them, so it's been 7 years since the A99 Mark II came out. What's next for the A mount? Is it being discontinued now that E mount is doing so well? And it was all deny, until no official announcement. It was just all over. So I believe that F mount is pretty much over. But I also think that Nikon is in a pretty good position. Remember the doomsayers? It's been like 10 years that these channels have been saying that Nikon is about to fold, that their financials are in terrible shape. In 2019, it seems every man and his dog was making videos about how Nikon was about to go under, how they were making a loss, and this was the end of all times. Well, a lot of that, I guess, is clickbait and just seeking views and jumping on the bandwagon. But fast forwarding a few years, in March, I think it was, 2024, Nikon bought Red cinema cameras. Less than a year after that, we've seen the first product from that collaboration already hitting the market. And I think it's fair to say that things are improving indeed. As I'm filming this, in May 2025, for the first time ever, Nikon took first place in terms of sales for full-frame interchangeable lens cameras. Now, I have to note that's limited to Japan, because that's the market that actually gives this kind of clear and transparent data. It's not a worldwide thing. Also, it's being driven primarily by the success of the Z5 Mark II, and it also coincides with a lull of sales and new releases from Canon and Sony. So that's all kind of a perfect storm that for the first time in its mirrorless history, Nikon took the top spot. So that's a lot of disclaimers that kind of take the wind out of the sails a little bit, but I think it's still a great sign that an entry-level full-frame camera from Nikon is getting such a great response in Japan, and I believe in Hong Kong, and I believe in America. It is a fantastic camera. You can check out my link tree for my recent review on that guide. but it's also just a good signal that the market is willing to invest in Nikon as a company and, you know, throw their hat in the ring because they're buying an entry-level full-frame camera from the brand, and that makes them, you know, a long-term potential customer, and you're going to see more and more sales of lenses and accessories and that kind of thing down the road. So I think that bodes well. Having said that, I think it is fair to say that Nikon were late to the game in mirrorless. While Sony was churning out new camera after new camera, refining and improving things, getting to full-frame mirrorless quickly, Nikon was literally still doing presentations at trade shows about how mirrorless technology wasn't it. It wasn't suitable for professional work. The mirror lag, the EVF lag was, the blackout was too much to be really considered a professional option, and that they were sticking with DSLR. A few years later, then we got the Z7 and then the Z6, and they started to play catch up. But I think it's fair to say, through to now, at least compared to Sony, they're still in many regards playing catch up, but I think they're really getting to a healthy position now, and I think it's kind of fair to start throwing pie in the sky wishes of what we would like to see. And I can tell you, I know that Nikon do watch this kind of video, so leave your comments below, keep it friendly and professional and polite, and put out there what you're hoping to see, what you've liked and what you'd like to see improved. So first of all, let's talk cameras. Rumors are that there's going to be a new, I think they're calling it a ZR, something that is Z, Nikon, and R, red. A real hybrid, kind of a boxy camera with no EVF, just big rear screen, something along the lines of like a Sony FX3 type camera. So for video guys, fantastic news. In terms of our kind of cameras, so the DSLRs are gone, we're now talking mirrorless. I have to say the Z8 and Z9 are fantastic and extremely capable cameras, but the Z9 in particular is getting up soon on 4 years in the market. It was 2021 when that was released, and whilst I would say it's still up there vying for the top position of best mirrorless camera on the market, there are certainly some things that could be improved, that technology has advanced enough that we could be looking for what could be iterated in the next body. So put your thinking caps on, start to formulate what you would like to see in terms of different bodies, and I'm going to circle back to bodies and first talk about lenses. Now, for whatever reason, Nikon went hard on long lenses early, and I think it's really well built out at this point. Just taking a look at B&H Photo, for example, the 28 to 400, 600 6.3s, 180 to 600, the 600 f4, the 400 4.5 and 2.8 TC, the 800 6.3, the 100 to 400, as well as, of course, of the 70 to 200, the 70 to 180, the 135 Plena. We're really spoiled for choice when it comes to long lenses. And talking about more standard primes, I'm currently filming on the 50-1.2, the 85-1.2, they're both spectacular. The 50 and 85 1.8s are both good lenses and much smaller, much cheaper. They're not wow lenses, however, but I think now that we are at that point that they've got multiple of different focal lengths on the market, I would love to see, as production capacity opens up, that Nikon do start to think about taking a lesson from Sony, who's more advanced in the market's playbook, and working on miniaturizing the lenses somewhat. Now, I'm not someone who bought into mirrorless because I wanted it to be smaller and lighter necessarily. It's the extra features that it offers that finally won me over, and it's what I love about it. But I just have to acknowledge that when I see a Sony user using their tiny little 51.2 second generation lens and how much lighter it is and how good the image quality still is, it does make our 50 and 85s look kind of ridiculous how big they are. So I hope that that's something we're going to see generation 2s or in between products come out that retain top quality but do make an effort to reduce the size and weight. Likewise, I would love to see more third-party lenses come to the market. Now, there's this conception out there that Nikon doesn't really have any. That's not the case at all. There's literally dozens of full-frame and APS-C autofocus lenses on the market, Again, taking a look at B&H Photo, Viltrox, Siri, Tamron, Yongnuo, Case, Sigma. There's loads, and there's more brands than that as well. There's loads of different options. If you compare our situation to, say, our poor Canon brethren who are kind of languishing, we're really fortunate. But then there's Sony, right? There's just so many more options out there, and options are a good thing, and it creates more competition in the market. Now that Nikon have a good foothold, they have a really solid range of lenses, there's less at stake. You know, you can have another manufacturer bring out an 85-1.4 at a lower price, but know that your 85-1.2 is still going to sell because it's so good. So I really hope we're going to see more of that. Now, in terms of bodies, I really do think they're on the right route. We have some really interesting things, like I said, the Z8, Z9, also the ZF has some really cool features. One thing, I'll start on this one, the subject detect mode in manual focus. I would love to see that feature rolled out to more cameras. I understand why they did it on this one first, because it's the kind of camera that you're more likely to adapt manual focus lenses to, but it's a really handy feature if you ever use that. It's not in any way a deal breaker for me though, because I rarely shoot manual focus lenses, to be honest, but it is a cool feature to have. Now, looking at the Z8 and Z9, do you guys have your list of wish lists made up? Make sure you leave it as a comment. For me, what I would actually really like to see happen is a splitting out again of the speed and resolution lines into two different lines. It doesn't have to be as dramatic as, say, a D3 and a D3X, where or you know, there was more in the D2 range as well, where they're exactly the same body, just they have a different sensor in them. It could just be as simple as going back to how we had it, say, with the D5 and the D850, where your Z8 size body is the high res option, or even like Canon were doing with the 5DSR and stuff, right? So you've got a high res option and then a sports option. Having said that, I personally would like that, but I also think that the combo they have right now, when they came out in 2021, of this resolution and this speed together without a compromise, was just fantastic. But now if we were to keep this and refine the sensor for speed and readout, and then get a second sensor that's a much higher res as the resolution one, focusing on dynamic range and color accuracy, then I think it could be a really smart move. In terms of the Z9, I would, as I said, love to see faster readout speed. I'd like it to be able to do, say, 8K 60 in 10-bit, and then some higher frame rate options in ProRes as well. I would love, and I know I'm not the only one, to see a pre-capture available in RAW on not just this, but all the cameras, but starting out with something like a Z9 Mark II. I would also really like to see the sensor shield redesigned, and the car door somewhat redesigned, and the port covers. I've talked about this multiple times. I think those should be made into individual doors rather than basically two big doors. As I said, Z8, I'd love to see this kind of body be host to a higher res sensor, but for the actual Z8 line, I do think it's doing quite well. I'd like to see the same sensor shield adjustment, and I would really love to see GPS put back into this guy. And I don't know what they can do, I'm not an engineer, but whatever they can do to better manage the thermals, because this still has significantly more difficulty handling the heat generated when you're shooting in video modes compared to the Z9, and that's probably just due to the amount of metal being able to dissipate the heat in the Z9 better, but it's still an issue and a flaw on the Z8. And I would love to see, this is something I've mentioned before, but the feet on these lenses, the quality of the screws or however they're being constructed, fixed. I've raised this as an issue. These are ripping off. People are finding that the screws are loose, they don't have Loctite on them, that the screws are just tiny, what's actually holding this, and a lot of people do hang their camera off this point. I now don't, unless I have a safety tether as well. It's been 4 months that I'm chasing Nikon for an official response on why that is, and I'm still waiting. And once I hear that, I will be updating you guys. But I think that's a small issue, but it's a significant one if you've got, you know, $5 or $6 and $2,000 or $3,000 worth of equipment hanging on your shoulder. You want to know that every part in it is well built and able to do what we expect it to do. But long story short, I am a happy Nikon user in 2025. You'll often see me using Sony and Canon and all kinds of different brands. That's essentially so that I can review things and keep the channel relevant to a broader audience. But for my own work, when I'm using 35mm, it is exclusively with Nikon in 2025. I also have a Hasselblad baby medium format kit for some other work. So that's about it. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think of the state of play in 2025, specifically for Nikon? What would you like to see improved, refined, changed, or new to come out later this year and 2026 and beyond? You can see full details of Patreon Uncut and my Nikon Z setup guide in the link tree below, as well as the different videos that I've referenced here. Let me know any questions you have. I'll see you soon.